Hi everyone, my name is Dasha, I'm 23 years old, and I'm asexual. When I was in first grade and boys started talking about where babies come from, it was a bit scary to me, like, how could that even be possible? It made me feel a bit disgusted. When the girls in first grade were trying to dress up their dolls to impress the boy toys, I also found it puzzling. I also used to put on mascara and lipstick, but I did it more out of curiosity. I was interested in why my mom could do it neatly, but I couldn't. When I was about 11 years old, I started going through puberty, a painful subject. When I first got my period, I thought I had cancer and made my parents take me for all sorts of tests. I really annoyed them with it. When my breasts started to develop, I also had to deal with reactions from relatives, thankfully not my parents. They would say, "Oh, you have breasts now, boys will like you." I, on the other hand, avoided boys' attention and people's attention in general. In 8th grade, I even wrapped my chest with bandages because at school they said, "You stuffed it with foam." Imagine, a petite girl with a C-cup. It was the 2000s, the peak of glamour and hypersexuality in the media. And of course, as a teenage girl, I wanted to fit that perfection. Of course, yes, under societal pressure. Starting from the 9th grade, I looked quite mature. I already had a shapely body. I had thick, dark hair at first. I decided to dye it at all costs because I constantly heard comments that dark hair meant a fiery temperament. Why don't you have a boyfriend yet? High school was also a painful topic because when a teenager is developing, they strive to prove their worth. For example, I once defended my math teacher from verbal attacks by some bullies. They told me that my boldness and desire to protect others were because I wasn't having sex. Imagine hearing that in 9th grade. I suppressed it and insisted that I wanted to have lots of boyfriends so they wouldn't think I was a weirdo. I wanted to be like everyone else. I even sometimes made up stories about having boyfriends and spending the night at their places so that the girls would respect me. Of course, I had a lot of insecurities. I asked my aunt for a SIM card as a gift. I would put it in another phone and send myself a message, "You're a tornado in bed." Then I showed it to the girls and my reputation soared, and they believed it. I think everyone was sending themselves texts like that, to be honest. Schools should teach that sex is an intimate act between a man and a woman if they feel mutual attraction and need. But it's not a way to prove oneself. My first time was at 21. I don't blame myself for having sex because, firstly, I've only had one partner. It's my husband. For me, it was a deliberate action to have a family. I really just wanted a child. Sometimes I imagined what it would be like if I had sex with someone else. I imagined what it would be like with the person everyone kept suggesting. I felt such revulsion that I can't even describe it. There are regrets. Why should I, a young, blooming woman, have to limit myself? I shouldn't have sex anymore. It makes you feel incomplete, defective. Why me? Who is restricted from sex? Well, monks. In my teens, and not just my teens, but in university too, many girls would say things like, "I don't have anyone, but I pleasure myself." To me, that's just incomprehensibly bizarre. I associate masturbation with an awkward 8th grader. Never tried. There was one incident, though. I was already in university at the time. I had this friend who was older than me, and she was quite unfulfilled, let's say. I used to give tours to visitors through this couch surfing site, and I'd often get photographed with the guys and girls. I showed her a photo of one guy and said we'd had an amazing time together. She asked if it hurt since I was a pioneer, so I started making up all kinds of things about how it's not painful, it's pleasurable, it's out of this world, and she believed me. And well, this guy was supposed to come visit her from another city, so she brought up the topic again. But then it turned out she actually slept with that barely known guy because she believed me. I felt really sad about that. I still feel guilty because after him, there was a string of other guys. She says the opposite, that she uses sex to relieve stress. I asked her, "Do you really want it that badly?" She said, "I don't actually want it at all." The need for sex masks the need for basic acceptance. So why do girls start having sex? Because they want acceptance from their classmates, from their peers, friends. Why does this girl want to get intimate again and again? Maybe because she's unsociable, doesn't feel supported by family. This happens sometimes. For example, I traveled a lot through couch surfing. I was never perceived as a woman. People could treat me, offer me a place to stay, but they treated me more like a 14-year-old teenager. I think this comes from one's internal mindset, which is reflected in outward behavior and mannerisms, showing that you're not going to engage with the person who hosted you, that you're focused on something else. I think this also shows in one's appearance. When a woman with her husband describes mind-blowing sex, it seems a bit blasphemous to their love and feelings. I never planned to get married. I planned for him to just register the child in his name. The child would be mine. Why should you maintain a pregnancy if you don't have a marriage certificate? For example, I ended up in the hospital and heard such insinuations from colleagues. How could this be? You must be sleeping with everyone to get pregnant, and I think I didn't need to prove that this child was intentional and planned. When my daughter was born, I realized that I finally had freedom, paradoxical as it sounds. Before the child was born, I felt somewhat incomplete. The thing is, I believed since childhood, no one instilled this in me, or maybe they did, but I didn't pay much attention to it, that if a girl has a baby after 21, she is already overripe, as I called it back then. My mom gave birth to me at 23, and I often reproached her for it, thinking, why didn't you have me earlier? We had a daughter. We both love her very much, my husband and I, but we live separately, and I am quite comfortable with that. He never respected boundaries. So he started by forbidding me from talking to my friends. He said, all your friends are sluts. And you have guys? You definitely slept with all of them. And at first, yes, he insisted a lot. I started to get stuck on this, saying maybe later, maybe somehow else. But after the baby was born, he completely lost interest in me. My husband could just hug me, and I would melt, and everything would be fine. And I believe this is more psychological because my husband hugs me, my daughter hugs me. I feel psychological comfort. But when I talked about this with other women, they said this isn't an orgasm. It's just a feeling of coziness, a sense of harmony. And it brings me great satisfaction. By the way, about orgasms. Many women I talked to, almost all of them, said they have sex only to keep a man. It's also about creating a family, being connected to this person, a kind of spiritual unity, but they don't have sex just for lust. And I used to think that everyone felt this way. But it turns out that's not the case. Being a young asexual person is, first and foremost, freedom, the ability to make your own choices, the ability to make decisions, and to be healthy and happy.